Hello and welcome to another episode of the Beyond the Device podcast, where we explore the life-defining moments that shape careers within the medical device industry. We are particularly interested in understanding how someone's personal experiences, challenges, or pivotal events influence professional journeys. And as we progress through the conversation, we will eventually land on the one question: what is the one defining moment or experience that changed everything and set you on the path that you're onto today? Today's guest is someone that's been in the industry for over 30 years, having spent time in QA, RA, QC across pharma, medtech, and diagnostics. He's built and scaled QMS frameworks, led global submissions and inspections, worked basically across every part of the product lifecycle and helped companies from scrappy startups to established players. But, and this is the part we love, it's not about that in this episode. Because like all the conversations on this podcast, we're not here to run through a CV, we're here for the person behind it. And when Andrew and I were talking before about coming on, he mentioned something really interesting. For someone that's got decades of experience, he battles with his own confidence and has had a fair share of imposter syndrome along the way. So today, we're going to get into that. The resilience behind the 30-year career, what's been going on personally for him at key pivotal moments, and the side of quality and regulatory that doesn't quite make it onto LinkedIn. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Andrew Rogers. Welcome.
Thank you. What a great introduction.
So, Andy, as you know, we like to go back to the beginning. So where did your story begin?
So I guess my story began in Macclesfield in Cheshire, growing up, struggling through school, which I enjoyed, but not from anything to do with what you have to do in class. It was all around the sport. So I played a lot of sport. I was in every single sports team that the school could produce, from basketball, football, rugby, cricket, not necessarily the athletics so much, but I was really lucky because the school had a really good sports fit. We even had squash courts. For a state-funded school, having two squash courts is absolutely fantastic. So I was playing squash at lunchtimes, basketball and all those things in the winter, and then some would be out on the field playing cricket and football and things like that. Then going into what were GCSEs, I probably didn't do as well as my parents expected. Really struggled. Didn't go through GCSEs at all. Really came out with not with what was expected to go on into further education. So managed to scrape a place at college to do a BTEC in science. And it's at that point when, from an education perspective, things sort of changed, because it wasn't necessarily a change as in going down academic routes at all. I am still not academic. I get massive questions in my head about the spaces I'm working in, but we'll come onto that but it does link together. But yeah, it was focused on that. But I use that, and I use the outdoor space and my sports and my wanting to be outside. You know, I was in the Scout Association. I used a massive outlet. I was kayaking, started through those scouts, and then progressed that into a dominant career or dominant sport that I competed in quite a lot. But a lot of my education was just led about what I appeared to be good at, not necessarily what I liked, but what I could hit the grades in. So my two top subjects were science. I'll call it science. It's generally physics or chemistry, and geography. Going to college, I got let off with lack of English, on a basis that I'd apparently written loads in geography. So the humanities bit sort of supported the English, and the maths was supported by the science. So I winged it and somehow managed to get into college to do a BTEC. I haven't got no idea. At college, it was then, oh, you're going to go to university. Now, neither of my parents and pretty much none of my family had ever even considered going to university. My mum is or was a shorthand typist. and my dad a joiner. So there's no academic background or university whatever. Um, Completely lost where to go. So I was sort of like, well, I don't know what to do. I've got no idea what career I want. At school, I wanted to be a vet. I think I was swayed by a TV program that was also at the time, were All Creatures Great and Small. And I thought spending the time driving around in the car in the Yorkshire Dales or the Peak Districts, seeing animals, talking to farmers, just drive around, have a lot of fun was really cool, and not actually accepting the fact that the education and the knowledge you need to do that and all the grades is far greater than I could possibly have achieved at that moment in time. So that went out the window. So a lot of my thing was just winging it, and I got into college. After college, coming towards the end of college, I got a fantastic opportunity. One of my best friends at the time had seen the headmaster at school had given him a note from a society called what was the British Schools Exploring Society to apply to go on an expedition. They run numerous expeditions all over the world. He was applying, and he said, "Oh, it'd be really cool if we could go together." Great, I had no idea. I'm a lot more laid back. But yeah, we'll apply. They were offering two expedition locations, one in Canada and one in the high Norwegian Arctic. So I thought I'd apply, and for some reason, the people that were doing the interviews and the selections thought I fitted the criteria and offered me a place on that 7-week expedition. That was from a resilience perspective. Looking back, that the Scout Association what has given me the basis of that resilience of not giving up and knowing that you can just keep going, and at some point things will start to get better. There's no defined timeline, but at some point it will start to get better or start to get easier. So I went on that. I went on that for 7 weeks, spent 7 weeks with a group of 12 other individuals I had never met in my life. So we came from all over the country, and got pretty much dumped in the middle of the Norwegian Arctic with a whole bag of rations, tents, your sleeping bags and kits, which were quite heavy. And did that for 7 weeks, and had a lot of fun. Learnt a lot about yourself, learnt a lot about how you can survive in any environment. And then came back to the UK, was applying to universities at that point, didn't hear anything back until they heard that I had been selected on the expedition, then weirdly got 2 unconditional offers, which from someone that's grinding their way through college to try and get any grade whatsoever, to then get that was just absolutely, I have got no idea. But again, it comes down to the supporting stuff you do that, and I teach that to my kids as well. It's like, I don't really mind if you're struggling at school and you don't get the grades, but if you do other stuff as well, it can help. It's that wider skill set that people look at now, and they don't just look at the grades.
Yeah.
So went to university, failed miserably at applied chemistry, but it was that kayaking that kept me going. And at that point, probably before I went to university, I was doing a lot of kayaking. I was a pain in the neck to my dad, having to drive me here, there, and everywhere with competitions. At 14, I was ranked 14th in the UK at a certain discipline. And I think if my parents would have pushed me more, I could have competed and done that as a professional career. I probably could have done a lot of different sports professionally, but that was the one that I picked and I really enjoyed. It takes you out of your comfort zone. You're battling an element that you can't control. You have no control over it, and it is far much stronger and better than you are. And it's that environment that I like, it takes you away. You can't think about anything else because you're trying to keep yourself alive. Depends on on where you are. If you're in the middle of the lake, it's not too bad. But if you're in a grade 4 or 5 rapids, it gets a little bit more tense. Because it doesn't really care who you are or what you're doing. It brings you down to that point. It's you versus the water, and you've got to keep yourself up, alive, and going down it in as best possible. But that didn't happen. I thought academia was better, more stable. My parents preferred the more stable option. I did get offered trials at football clubs, and my mum was very much a case of no, you are not going to be a professional football player. But because she sees it as a not a career, she wanted her children to have careers that they could develop. So I followed what I was best at and then just went into science. At uni, as I said, I failed my first year at HNC, went on a sandwich year. So I was doing a HND at that time, so it was only a 2-year course. It was like a preset to doing a degree, but it had the sandwich year in it. So I applied to a company called Abbott that was in the Isle of, I can't remember where it was now, the Isle of Swale down in East Kent, where I thought it was up in Scotland. So I was like, great, we're going up to Scotland. I was then at Abbott. They interviewed me, offered me the sandwich year. Again, no idea why. The manager at the time was great. Moved down there for a year. Found out I failed my HND at that point, and went, right, what am I going to do? I've now got a choice. I either go back to university and try and do it again and look a bit of a twit, or I try and get a job here at Abbott, because I don't know what else. Can they offer me a permanent job on the basis of this contract? They weren't sure. The only other option I had, or the option I had in my head, was if you don't offer me a permanent job, I will go and do something like join the army or the navy or join the armed forces, because I don't know what else to do. That would fit me from a physical perspective. Whether I'm clever enough to do that, I don't know, but it would match that side. They then, however, offered me a permanent contract, and then a couple of years later paid for me to do my degree part-time. So I ended, because back then it was very much a case of if you don't have a degree, you can't progress into management and you can't progress up the career.
So I'm gonna jump in there because there's a lot to unpack up until this
Sorry.
point. No, it's good. I just think there's some key things I want to cover off here where from an early age getting to GCSEs, you mentioned perhaps not getting the grades your parents would have expected. And then you've got this sports side of your youth where you're really competitive and driven and probably structured in that element. But overarching your review of that period is winging it. So at what point in your journey, and maybe it's once you get your degree, once you've got this job, but if you look back at maybe not doing that great in your GCSEs, then going to college with no real plan and then moving on, at what point did you think maybe as a child you'd reach the expectations of your parents or made them proud? Because it feels like there's an element of that in there.
I think the only bits I feel my parents are, well, one, they're proud that I've probably got a career. The main bits they're probably proudest of was me gaining my what was Queen Scout Award. So going through that process, which is not easy, and getting that, and then having the opportunity to meet the Queen at Windsor. That's probably the bit they're proudest of. They're proud that I've probably got a career, that I had that I've now got a relatively stable career, that I've got, I've made a career pathway. My dad's only criteria that I remember him setting me was, I don't care what you do, you just need to earn more money than I do. um, which is a tricky one because I got no idea how much. Being a joiner, working for ICI, probably was on a reasonable wage, but not something fantastic. But that's irrelevant. It's not about money's not the issue. It's making sure you enjoy it. And somehow I managed to fall into something I enjoy. But I think that and getting selected and going on the expedition I did, are probably the Queen Scout Award and the expedition probably from their perspective, because they counteract the GCSEs and the qualifications.
Yeah.
There's two sides. You've gone and got the top award in an organisation. You can't get any higher than that as a under 18 or now under 25. That is the highest you could get. So just because you haven't done this, you've done really well at that. So that's probably the proudest point.
And what we find is maybe it is because some people excel better academically when they're younger. It's because of the influence of a parent that's in that field or a teacher. Some people find role models later on in life, and it can be through sport. So is there anyone that you can think of? Maybe it's people that were involved in this expedition, but really just from a structure or lessons that you've learned at a young age. Like, was there anyone that was a key influence?
So the biggest influence at school was probably my geography teacher. I think he sort of liked the outdoor mountaineering, hill walking side of a couple of students. So he lent me a book at the time, which was Touching the Void. Fantastic book. Taught about a guy that ends up falling down a crevasse in the Andes, and crawls his way out of that crevasse. I think he was more supportive from the non-academic route, so he obviously got the fact that you weren't academic and therefore pushed it and supported it to try and get as much as he could out of you in order to get those grades. So I think he was really good. The other one I look back and the guys on the expedition, the two leaders we had were really good. Again, they're more geology focused, but they were really supportive and really help guide and just let you get on with stuff. So we were doing really, really silly things on that expedition when I look back at it. There's one point where we were on the top of the top of this ice plateau, basically. We'd just put the tents up and we were just having a bit of downtime after we'd pulled 40-50 kilos of gear up a glacier, and we found a snow bridge. So you've got a crevasse, and that's where the snow's gone over the top. And we actually were lucky in one way. We found two. So you had one above another. So you had got this crevasse, and you got two snow bridges. And we thought it was really cool that you could walk along, put a bit more weight on, and just disappear through the snow onto the next snow bridge. We were 18, 19, 17, 18, one was 19. So we were indestructible. So we thought it was really cool, and we were doing this and we were playing, and it wasn't until, and he was, I don't think he was aware, but he was letting us do it, and we then had the leader of the whole expedition visited at that point, and we got significantly told off by him for being silly. We hadn't appreciated the fact that below that second bridge could have been a 70, 80 meter drop to the bottom of that crevasse. We didn't care. We just thought it was really cool. So having that ability to make mistakes in a way, that probably is a bit of an extreme, because if you made a mistake, it could have been quite significant. But it's having people that allow you to make those mistakes and learn from your mistakes, which is fundamental, that I think in anything you do.
Yeah. And when you look back on your life, and maybe at the time you didn't realise they were key moments or turning points, but upon reflection you do now. Are there any things that stand out from earlier years, later on in life, that are kind of pivotal for you and set you on the path that you're onto today?
Getting the job at Abbott is what set me on my path in QA, QC and QA at that time, and then progressed into bringing in regulatory affairs. That's what being offered that job and being offered the job. I then sort of just accepted that job and then found that I'm obviously doing something I'm relatively good at outside of sport, and going with it and progressing that. So it's been offered that opportunity. So the manager that gave me that opportunity is one that probably set me on that path and took me away from another route. That was almost a fork. I pretty much had two options then. It was going down a military route or going down staying in the thing. That was probably the fork in the road that I had at that time. And being offered a permanent job with that thing, I made a decision and took that road, and that then set me on that path to where I am now.
And why did you choose that path?
Security. That's all. A job with money.
Yeah.
I think at that age I enjoyed it. Working in a lab and working in that lab was absolutely great. The camaraderie, the people in there were really good. Some of the managers and team leaders gave you a hard time, but that hard time on reflection was on purpose. They probably didn't realise it, but they helped you understand what you're doing, understand how important getting things right were. If you're testing product, then you need to make sure that that's tested right, because the end result of getting it wrong, you don't want to think about, because that could have significant consequences to that patient. So it's that bit, and it was just a job security, and I just wanted to get a job that has a secure pathway, and that's probably why I chose the two options I had. But then it came up, it's like, right, we'll give you. It's like, I'm enjoying it. We might as well go with this one.
Yeah.
It's relatively comfortable, but we'll see where it goes. I have time to change my mind if I want to.
And how are you feeling at the point of being offered? Because if you just reflecting on a few things you've said so far in the conversation, whenever you've had an opportunity, it's always, I don't know why I got it, but I just somehow did, or it's almost like you didn't believe you were worthy of having that opportunity. Was this another sort of example of that?
Yes, I was not necessarily pushing for it. It's like, look, I've got my contracts running out. Am I going to get made permanent? I need to know. Not necessarily that I'm expecting them to give it to me, because I don't think I'm necessarily good enough, but I just need to know what the decision is. And then when they do offer, it's like, okay, that's great, but I'm not quite sure what I'm doing better than anyone else. But I'm obviously doing enough for them to realise that you are doing okay, and they want to offer you that. So yes, it's still, everything I get is, even jobs now, I do sometimes wonder what they see, and why me, in a way. I always have that, and probably always will. And it gets slightly coming into the thing now, but I get it more now with the people I work with, than I did back then, because everyone was roughly the same level. You had a few degrees, but in QC, in quality control and testing laboratories at that time, you didn't get many degrees. People with degrees were doing far other stuff than working in testing raw materials and finished product.
And can you pinpoint why you feel like this? Is there like yeah?
it's just real lack of confidence. I think it's just really, even in sport, I was doing very well. I could compete at a good level. I could win competitions. I could do that. But it's always a thing. It's always been in the back of my mind that it's someone is always better than you. So if you win, it's like, what did I do right? Why have I come out with this? What have I is it? It's lack of confidence. It's just always that lack of confidence. Always not being the best and having to work for it, and therefore, or not seeing that it's come, not perceiving that it's natural, and therefore it's like having to work for it. But if you then have to work for it, you then sometimes feel you don't necessarily deserve it because you're not seen to be naturally gifted, and therefore they have it more. Now that everybody that gets to a high level has to work. You don't get to that level without putting in the effort and putting the work in. Nothing comes to you on a silver platter, and therefore it must be in my head that I have that question about why am I here, why me, why am I doing this, even though I put the effort in and I've done the work.
Have you ever tried to seek professional support with this, like working with a mindset coach or something like that? Because I've, like you struggle with confidence and self-esteem at times, but I think the one thing that helps it is taking action. And as you said there, there's nobody that can reach high performance without putting in the work. You might look at other people and think they're naturally gifted, but I think if you were to speak to them and see how they've trained or developed or studied over years and the sacrifices they've had to make, the evidence will be there. And actually working with someone that can help you with that structure may help. Have you ever sought that out?
I did have at Vigon, I had a coach. We got that coach. It was the learning development manager who had done coaching. So I started to have a coach and work on those bits, but that was only for a short period of time, and it's something I possibly need to, looking through things and doing stuff. It's possibly something I could possibly work with to look at getting one, and maybe working through those bits would be benefit. They helped me, yeah. Having a coach at that time helped, and did allow me to understand and make some good decisions on reflection. And they help break it down. And it needs to be, I did learn from that there's a difference between a coach and a mentor, a distinct difference. And so you need to understand the differences and understand what you want, to then make sure you get the right person that can help you
Absolutely.
develop that.
Yeah, because I think once you start to put yourself out there a bit and seek that coaching, it's like therapy. Some people feel like they should only go to therapy once they're suffering with their mental health. Others can see the value in it at other times. But the key thing is finding the right therapist, because if you get the wrong one, again, it could knock you and then you go, okay, that's not for me. When actually it might just be trial and error. You could scroll on LinkedIn for 5 minutes and probably see about 10 mindset coaches pitching their services. It doesn't mean they're all good. And there's a lot out there. So with this imposter syndrome and the career that you've had and the people that you work with, how do you deal with it day to day? Because there must just be this voice in your head that you're having to manage, because you still need to do your job, right?
Yes.
So how do you do it?
I just do the best I can. That's pretty much all I do. Is I try to do the best I can, all the time, and that can be quite hard work, mentally. But I can only do that. That's all I can do, and it's finding, I think through life, it's finding people, and I probably work better with people that understand that and accept that you can only do the best you can do. And it's not it's don't get me wrong, there's not a problem in pushing that boundaries and getting feedback and developing and learning and continuing to develop, but you still can only really do the best you can. And it's working with that, but it's also probably just it's finding people that you click with, that allow you to reach the best and help you and support you rather than belittle.
Yeah.
And things have changed. A lot of things have changed. When I started, there was a lot of belittling and putting people down, and always, the only time you ever get called to your manager's office is when you've done something wrong. And I still have that now. Is whenever a manager or a leader calls you up and says, if they don't give you the background first, it's always like, right, what have I done wrong? What mistakes have I made? How am I going to get told off this time? And it's getting better, but if you've grown up with that environment, which it was 30 years ago, it's hard to get out of that. But it's just finding those people that you can actually work with.
Yeah, I feel like there's some almost like core beliefs in there from childhood and through your career that are feeding this imposter syndrome, because with confidence, it's also your, people call it like limiting beliefs, and doing the best you can do is based on what you think that is. And actually, you could break through that and go, well, no, my potential is X, what I'm doing now, and this is how I'm going to go after it, if that's what you want to do. And again, that's where just a different narrative internally starts to just feed into all of the other habits that you do day to day, how you carry yourself, all of these things. It all links, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But with your journey and those kind of turning points and the tools and practices that you use every day, if someone was going through their own turning point or life challenge at the moment, what advice would you give?
I think it's you've got to try and stop and breathe. Try and go with what I think. I'm now an advocate of, you need to do something you enjoy, and if you're not enjoying it, don't do it. It's hard. I'm not, it's easy to sit here and give advice of go, if you're not enjoying it, don't do it. It's not always that easy, but there's generally always another option than the one you're on. And it's a lot of that, but it's seek help. If you're struggling, try and find someone that can help you, even if it's talking to a friend, a colleague, just a random person in a pub, for example. Just talking and having a different perspective can help you frame it slightly differently. I've been lucky recently, well, relatively recently, that you've had someone that can do that, and that's probably why things have changed in my career that over the past 10 years that may not have happened had they stayed the same. And we'll move on to that. But I think it's just talking to someone, understanding what your options are, but also just appreciating the fact that nothing stays the same. Everything changes. And that, I want to put that as a fourth law of the universe, is the fact that everything will change.
Yeah, yeah.
And
So this person that you mentioned then, 'cause it feels like that's the right time to talk about that. Is this a person in your life personally or professionally?
Personally, yes. So it's my current partner. She's
Okay.
great.
Shout out.
Oh yes, I'd definitely shout out, and I'd support her. She knows that. Well, I hope she knows that I think she's great, and she had been a massive turning point and support from massive things that happened in my life. What now? 10, 11 years ago, that put what I thought was an okay life completely upside down.
And what is the biggest influence that she's had on you? Like, what's the biggest change she's
Support,
made? Yeah,
support, and pushing me. She pushes me um, to be better. To in a lot of things, not just. Um, but she has that support. She has that encouragement. You can do this. You can go and do this. It's not the end of the world. Don't limit yourself to what you think in your head, because you can do more than that.
did she push you to come on here?
No, she didn't.
No. Well,
She
there you
did
go.
encourage it, but she didn't push me to come on here. This is an opportunity that I thought of, got offered, and like I'm always wanted to sometimes put myself out of my comfort zone, and I've done it a couple of times in the past, from a career perspective. And this is just one of those where it's like, actually, let's just, what's the worst that can happen?
Yeah. And I suppose on the imposter syndrome piece, like, can you look back and see decisions you didn't take because of it? Has it had a negative impact, or on the flip side, has it had a positive impact in that you've worked harder for things and actually you've got where you are because of it?
I think it's that. I think it's that one,
Yeah.
the latter, in the fact that I've I've worked harder to get. I feel I've worked harder. I put the effort in, and I've done the time in order to get where I've got to. It wasn't easy. Um, it's not easy. There's other things that you struggle with, such as dyslexia and stuff that didn't even get diagnosed at school.
Mm.
That wasn't even on the cards at school. Um, it was just like you're just poor at English. It's okay. Just, you're doing okay. So just get on with it. But it's making time and the effort that you put in. And academically, I have got by. I wouldn't say I think hand on heart have I put lots of effort in to get the qualifications. Possibly not. I could have probably done more. Um, but the work and everything I do from a work perspective gets a lot of effort in order to produce what I give. And that's it's putting that effort in to get there. And if you didn't have the imposter syndrome, then I probably wouldn't put as much effort in, because I need to prove that I'm as good as everyone else.
It's a superpower then.
In some ways, yes.
Yeah. Well,
It gives you the drive. It gives you the drive.
yeah. Well, looking forward then. So let's think about you personally, you professionally. What's on the table for you?
So I'm currently sort of back with a company or a organisation I left. So I'll call it a group company because it's the same group of people, just they've changed the name and respun it. So IVD's trying to save the world, as a lot of IVDs are trying to do, or save humanity. I'm not quite sure which. But we're developing tests to try and help people and try and personalise medication from an IVD perspective, which is something, excuse me, something I'm quite passionate about, because I think, as I look back and as I see more, medication is just trying to hit things with sledgehammers, and not the right tool sometimes. So we need to make it personal. Everyone's different. Everyone's unique, and therefore trying to make the best medication that works for you, identify it so that the doctors and clinicians can prescribe it, is the right way to go.
And then personally,
Well, personally, I'm trying to raise two children. Trying to get my daughter through her my stepdaughter through her GCSEs. That's a challenge in itself. Um, and then my just support my son and trying to give him the ability to do everything, and that not giving up, or that perseverance of whatever you do, just keep trying, and it will happen. You know, you will get better, or you'll be able to accomplish it. You just need to keep trying.
Is he good at kayaking?
Actually, yes, he's only what, he'll soon be 9. So, but yes, he's been kayaking since 7, conveniently. So he's not too bad actually. He doesn't listen to me anyway. Um, but he's good at that. That outside is what I try and give him. We're restricted by location. I don't have the location that I had when I was growing up. Being in Cheshire and having the Peak District, North Wales and the Lake District all within an hour and a half, 2 hours drive, was massively advantageous. But we get him outside as much as possible, and he'll get. I'm conscious though that not to push sport at such an early age. I see a lot of people that push and get very they push their children a lot into sport, into lots of different sports, but they get very competitive. And he keeps wanting to play football and do stuff, and I'm very much not yet. You're too young. I'm not putting you in those environments just yet. I think because I've been there, I'm like, you
Yeah.
don't want to be there just yet.
It's interesting you say that because reflecting on your kayaking and being ranked 14th in the UK at 14, you said that if your parents had pushed you a bit more, you may have been higher up in those rankings and could have won. So there's a balance, isn't there? Because you know, if there's, I think kids at an early age, they've got to enjoy it, and then if they show promise, as a parent, you can support them, put them in the right areas, ferry them around everywhere. So it's finding that balance because well, you make the decisions that are right for you at the time, but would you want your son in the future to reflect in the same way, thinking, "Oh, if I'd have just been pushed a little bit more, I could have been at
No,
the top."
and I'm conscious of that, but I'm also conscious that he's only 9.
Yeah,
And I think I don't like, the sports he wants to do. I don't necessarily like. He wants to play football, but I'm conscious of that environment. Um, and what some of the some other parents, some other people are like in that environment. So I'm probably just trying to shield him a little bit until he's old enough to be supportive of that, and then whatever he chooses to do will get full support.
yeah, yeah,
Um, and yeah, if he does something he wants to really push it, then fine, we'll push it.
yeah,
But it'll be around him wanting to do it.
yeah,
But on the other side, it's not just taking the easy route either. It's if it gets hard and he goes, then I want to give up. It's like, no, 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 we don't just give up. And it's like that thing, it's like, I'll play football, but only in the summer. When it gets cold and wet, I don't want to play. It's like, no, you give up on the nice, sunny, bright days when you're enjoying it if you're going to give up. Not when it's blasting down with rain or hail. They're not the time to give up, because that's just the environment. That's not you not enjoying it. So
yeah,
you've got to get through that.
yeah. So you said earlier, well, I asked you for a bit of advice for people going through their turning points, and you said, find people to speak to and lean on. But if you were to now leave our listeners with one key lesson from your journey, what would that be?
I'm going to steal someone else's narrative, which is never give up. Just keep going. Um, it's important to persevere, even when it gets, and it's not easy and it can be hard. But if that's a path you want, is stop. Only stop when it gets easy. Don't stop when it gets hard, because pushing through it can have massive benefits.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your journey. I think just being vulnerable and talking about some of the things that you still have to deal with day to day in terms of the imposter syndrome, but that last lesson there, just keep going, has got you to where you are today. So thank you for coming on and sharing your story.
Yeah, big thank you.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
And
And
yeah,
to all of our other guests and listeners, well, thank you again. But if you're reflecting on your own journey and feel like you've got a story to tell, please reach out to myself or Nathan. Encourage you to like and subscribe across YouTube and Spotify. And we'll be back soon with another episode.
thank you.